Friends and neighbors, welcome to the full experience. That stands for First, Ultimate, Lowest, Last, where we sum up an entire series by watching just those 4 episodes. The first, the last, the highest rated on IMDb, the lowest rated on IMDb. And we are finishing up Star Wars Andor, the last episode, Jedha, Kyber, Erso, which first aired 2 weeks ago, May 13th.
Oh my God.
2025. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood.
Hey, so just so I have my head on straight, is this the one where they did the raid on the apartment, or that was the previous one? Wait, what happened in this one?
We are in the middle of the raid
Okay.
On the apartment. I wrote all of the things that we don't know. When we come into this episode, we're like thrown into the previously on tells you like they did a raid and the raid went bad. And now when they came back, we're not in the middle of the raid. Actually, we're in the middle of the fallout of the raid. So they've come back and everybody's angry at them. So we're already back on Yavin. Okay. That's where we are at the beginning of this episode. We don't know why Cyril's love interest is in prison. We only know Cyril's love interest from a brief scene in the Ultimate episode where he's yelling at her, you know, like, what have you done? What have you done? We don't know what Bix is in the previously on. In the previously on, we see a message from Bix. We don't even know who it's to if we're just watching these 4 episodes where she's like, I don't want to do this to you. And then, of course, later on in this episode, it's revealed that she's pregnant. We don't know.
I think that moment, I remember when I was watching it thinking, because this is interesting because we got to enjoy this both knowing that we were watching it, you know, in real time and through the lens of what this would look like in the full experience. I remember thinking, yeah, I'm pretty sure I could intuit why this long lingering shot on Bix with a baby, what that means.
But we never saw Bix and Andor even come close to getting together.
Yeah, you're right. We only saw the strong sexual tension between the two at the very beginning of the series.
At the very beginning of the series. So you're right. It's not a big leap to make, but there's nothing to confirm that. We don't know who the woman they saved in the raid is. We've never met her before. We barely saw Luthien in the lowest rated episode. We've never seen her. But again, maybe that doesn't matter. It's like, oh, she's the one with the message. We don't need to know her backstory. We do know what a Death Star is. So when they say that, you know, I think that's easy. We don't know Saw Gerrera. You would know him if you watched Rogue One or Saw Gerrera. But maybe that's okay. Maybe it's just
we do
crazy
meet
rebel
him.
guy, you know?
Right.
We don't know Mon Mothma's story at all. In these 4 episodes, we never got Mon Mothma's story. So when she shows up, you might know her from Star Wars lore and be like, oh, she's at Yavin too. Cool. But we missed that whole thing.
Well, but even then, that seems to me like we get the same level of Mon Mothma that we got in all of the Star Wars. Like she never had a backstory,
which is kind of damning to Andor of like, well, did you really need to have Mon Mothma's story at all then? Right.
Yeah, no, I didn't mind it. So like, when you're diving in water, there's a temperature drops very sharply about X number of feet off. They call it the thermocline, right? So, and then there are certain kind of fish that live below the thermocline versus above it. So like Mon Mothma's story, we just get more of the same type of Mon Mothma that we've seen in all the other Star Wars stuff. And it's great that we got to explore, not in the full experience, but over the course of Andor, it turns out that there is a whole person and story down beneath the thermocline.
Okay.
But yeah, I didn't mind it.
We can guess that K2SO is the droid that Cass gathered parts for at the end of the Ultimate. That was a nice bit of like, oh, we saw him make a point of like, hey, get all the pieces. And then next thing we see like, oh, he's got an attack droid piloting a ship. I bet it's that guy. So that was a nice connection. We also, while we don't really get his story, we know Will, who goes with him on the raid from the Ultimate episode. because he's there in the rebellion. He's the one who's like, no, I've got to go save my girl. You go on without me. And so that's a nice tie up of like, oh, I guess he made it back. Cool. You know? So
that was the same dude that later was in Rogue One, right?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. I'll look it up real quick.
We should look that up.
Yeah.
We only briefly met Luthien, so his death hits different, right? It's like, oh, a major stalwart of the rebellion has died, and I guess he's very divisive, but we didn't actually get his story in the full experience. I'm not sure that one little flashback in this finale gives us anything other than like, well, I guess we got flashbacks in 2 of the 3 episodes we watched. The big scene, I already talked about her being pregnant. And Mission, the person that will only talk to Cass is the only thing where I had the same reaction here as I did when I watched it when I was watching all of Rogue One or all of Andor, is that person, like, he'll only talk to you. I was like, man, I'm forgetting who this was. Well, I wasn't forgetting who it was. The only reason that we're setting this guy up is he's the person that Cass talks to at the very beginning of Rogue One. It doesn't bother me a lot, but I'm like, oh, it would have been nicer if we had been introduced to him and we knew why he would only talk to Cass, but whatever, it's fine.
Okay. Is it Ruscott Melshi, the one who escaped prison with Cassian Andor? He is in Rogue One.
That's not Will, no.
That's not Will? Okay.
No.
Well, I was thinking of the kind of bald dude where they're like, who does this gun belong to?
Oh, no. That's a Rogue One. Yes.
Okay.
No, Will,
okay, good.
Will is the guy who has the girlford who's part of the resistance.
Got it.
And he's like,
yeah.
You got to come with me, Will. And Will's like,
yeah.
No. But then Will does show up on Yavin. And we're like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
That's right.
Yeah. I think I actually accidentally said he went on the raid with Cass, which confused you. And he did not go on the raid with Cass. Will is a different guy. But yeah, those are all my notes from rewatching it for this. And it really does tie right into Rogue One because we get the like, Cass, this guy will only talk to you. Go check him out. And that's the end of Andor. That is the end of the series. Is Cass is going off somewhere to meet some guy. I guess he's going off on another mission and Bix is pregnant. That's the end.
So this is, I don't know if we're, this is where we run into the fringes, and people who were worried about whether or not this would map onto the full experience maybe have a point, because on the one hand, this should be the end of the full experience is this episode, in which case it is a deeply unsatisfying end and a giant confusing question mark of like, why even was that last episode? But we've seen confusing waste of time ending episodes on shows before. I'm looking at you, MASH. I'm looking at you, Sliders, right?
Definitely Sliders.
But also, the end of shows serve different purposes. We've seen tearful, weepy goodbye end of series episodes. We've seen, whoops, we didn't get renewed, surprise ending, cliffhanger episodes. Here's one we've never seen before. Retrofitted retconning to recontextualize a movie. And so, but before we move into Rogue One, let's pretend this is just straight up the end of the full experience. Number one, I would say that ending just doesn't play nice with the full experience. But if the question is, does the full experience pretty much give you the whole story? Like you pretty much have watched Andor if you do the full experience? I will say, yes, you pretty much have watched Andor.
I agree with you 87%. I think this definitely gives you the Cass Andor story. And so that is the major story. And so, yes, you will be conversant with Andor. If you sat down with somebody who watched Andor, you would still be missing things. And that's where I go back to that Mon Mothma storyline just not being present here. And the fact that you see Luthien, but you don't know who he is. And Luthien, I think even more so than Mon Mothma, is an essential part of this story, to the point where like he's the one that gets the Jedha Kyber Erso message out. I feel like that is the one part that I feel like the full experience dropped the ball on is Luthien's story.
You do,
but in the end, you've got most of the story here, so I think it is a success.
So Luthen's character really has no arc. He almost isn't a character so much as a lever, a force of nature.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
He almost just is.
He's an element, not a character.
He is an inciting incident, basically, right? Your protagonist and your antagonist really are Andor, Cassian, and Cyril. And
you get their full story, which is great.
Yeah. And I guess if you had to give one up, and you're right, we do lose, what's her name? Why can I not access
Bix?
her name? No. Bix's counterpart on the evil side. Ends up in jail.
Dina?
No.
Why don't I should
Dedra.
I know Dedra. Okay. Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah. We actually lose Cyril and Andor's partner stories. We don't really get Bix's story, although we get more of Bix's story than we get of Deidre's story.
Yeah. I don't mind it. If you're going to have to drop someone, that's a complete, if you only get 4 coupons.
I think, and this is obviously full experience isn't done by design. It's sort of taking a formula and applying it. If the formula was working at top efficiency, which it has in the past, where we're like, whoa, I think we really nailed it. You would get more of Luthien's story. You would get more of Bix's interaction with Cass. But I still think you got the majority. You got the most important parts. So while I wouldn't call it 100% success, I do think it's mostly successful.
Yeah, it did pretty much work, which brings us to, let me put it this way. All of the ways the full experience didn't work, I can lay firmly at the intentional decisions of the writer's room of Andor, in which really in that last episode is where we see them bail on excellent storytelling and instead do the heavy lifting that they knew that this is the price to do Andor. They had to do the heavy lifting of retconning things to smooth over to see if they could make Rogue One a better movie after the fact, without changing the movie, without special editioning it, because Lord knows that's a very sensitive issue among Star Wars fans. Without touching the original, could they recontextualize everything and make Rogue One from, in my opinion, upon first watching, a poor movie into a good movie? And before we explore this, let me point out to everyone, this has already been done many times over. A lot of dumb things about the original trilogy were fixed after the fact, post hoc, in the Star Wars expanded universe, books, short stories, novels, all that stuff. And in X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, in the games, and all of the, even in the Ewok adventure and so on. Like, we have seen post hoc retconning before. And I have to say, I was astonished at how much better, far from good, but how much better Rogue One became. It is a very serviceable theme park ride after Andor. The closest parallels I can think of are Serenity and Firefly, or Stephen King's The Dark Tower. Like that movie, that the Ron Howard movie, that was not Stephen King's The Dark Tower, but it was a fine theme park ride themed around that beloved franchise. Similarly, Serenity at least knew that it was a movie that was existing as a spiritual rebirth of the TV show. So you could tell that it did a lot of things on purpose. Whereas Rogue One is just pure uncanny valley the whole way through. And there were times that I got lost in scenes that the first time did not take me at all. I guess to summarize, my take, if I remember correctly, my take the first lap through was that it was just too many characters. I spent too much time trying to keep a mental map of who's who and not enough time caring about people. As clumsy as the very ending was, where quite literally, Tom, they make a plot point of blurting out 5 plot point names multiple times. So air quotes, the character can remember them, definitely not the viewer at home. And then guess what you see in the first 10 minutes of Rogue One? Check boxes, all 5 of those are like, oh, I know what a Galen Erso is. They just had me repeat it 7 times. I know took care about Kyber crystals.
I thought that was the thing that worked the best. That moment in Rogue One where in the first time I watched Rogue One and he's like Erso and he's like Galen Erso. I'm like, well, I know who that is because I read the call sheet. I guess Diego Luna did too. The second time I watched it, he goes, Galen Erso. I'm like, oh yeah, we just saw him learn that name. He would say that. He would be like, wait, Erso's a name I just learned and now you're saying it? Do you mean the same Erso? And that totally played. My opinion is pretty similar to yours, which is this didn't work nearly as well on one end as it did on the other. Like Andor went from being extremely compelling to being like, I'm seeing the wires here as they're trying to get to a point. And as I mentioned with like, this guy will only talk to you. I was like, but who's that guy? On the other end though, it works great. Like at the beginning of Rogue One, you're like, oh, I know why he's doing this. I had no idea why he was doing it before, but now I do. And now I know why he thinks that. Now I know why he reacts that way. And actually have a little more background on Saw Gerrera. Okay, the farther you get from the beginning of Rogue One, the less that works.
Right.
And by the end of Rogue One, it's not working at all. But they did a good pipe fitting job to make Rogue One work better at the expense of making the ending of Andor work better.
A quick question. There was one noteworthy moment. Was it the last episode that I believe we saw our very first Star Wars suicide? Imperial suicide? Was that in the last episode where the blaster's handed in the Fallout and Partagaz shoots himself off screen?
Yeah. Where he waits outside.
Yeah, that was extraordinary because I guarantee you that a bunch of Disney executives in suits had to gather around a sound engineer's office and argue down to the decibel just how muffled that muffled blaster shot needed to be.
Most likely. I could see that.
But at any rate,
the door stays closed, right? We're not going to like see anything seeping underneath. Those conversations were had.
But sure. Anyway, I thought that was amazing. And that scene was so subtle and necessarily so, given the family-friendly nature of the show, that it almost slipped past me. I was like, did I see that right? And my daughter laughed and said, this is a Star Wars. And I'm like, whoa. But okay, so let's explore what it's like to watch Rogue One, because it's a bit like a strange fever dream. Andor, it's like Bizarro. They so faithfully, Rogue One faithfully recreated Yavin sets from A New Hope, and then Andor faithfully recreated Yavin sets and actors from Rogue One. And then, and as a result, you feel very anchored with the characters. You feel very anchored with the places. And you have a sense, and as a result, you have more mental bandwidth to notice new characters like Jyn Erso. The opening scene doesn't work at all, where it's suddenly space opera. It is jarring to go from the concreteness of the style guide of Andor to the fantasy cartoon with weird swelling music and just pew, oh, I died. It's like, whoa, when did that become a thing you're allowed to do? That was weird. But I got to tell you, Tom, my favorite part, the thing that did the most heavy lifting of everything, was the snide, eye-rolling approach to the Force that is in Andor, which we did get to see and experience in the Ultimate episode, I believe. No, I don't think we did get to see it in this one.
We see it in the previously on.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
where she says, I think there's something special about you.
But you might as well be thinking of the Force as astrology, right? Weird hippie stuff at best. And then you go into Rogue One and that flavor stayed, I don't know about you, but it stayed with me. So as a result, when you got this blind guy, I'm like, guy probably isn't even blind, a Force beggar, whatever. And it's like somebody says, Force be with you or whatever. It's like, oh, one of those. And, and then think about your introduction, like, this idea of your introduction to the Star Wars universe being Andor means you hear of a Darth Vader and you meet a weird psycho hippie who has who laces his atmosphere with hallucinogens or something, like whatever that, it reads almost like he poisoned the air around, what's his name? Krennic. And you kind of don't believe the Force until all the way up until, think about it, that last scene with Vader that I hated in the movie theater, that was pure fan service, reads as the first demonstration of the Force that you see at all if your opening thread is through Andor. Yeah. And in that way, the idea like, oh, crazy burnt out hippie man has real superpowers? What? Now I'm interested. It was fascinating. I had a really good time.
I think that's a better point for Andor than the full experience, because we really didn't get that flavor of the Force skepticism in the full. But it's a fair point, because they did a great job of laying that groundwork in Andor in other ways. I actually fell asleep before the end of Rogue One.
Oh, yeah, I don't blame you. It does get cartoony, but I'll tell you what, when you're only having to meet 4 or 5 new characters in Rogue One, because Mon Mothma, you already know, Bail Organa, there are some fan service moments.
Oh, by the way, recasting of Bail Organa, work or not work for you? Because it wasn't Jimmy Smits in Andor.
I did not notice. I somehow thought that was Jimmy Smits in Andor.
No, in Andor, I don't want to get the name wrong, so let me make sure
it
that
never even occurred to me to.
I look it up. It's Benjamin Bratt.
Okay. Wow. Well, it worked very well indeed.
Yeah. You might know Benjamin Bratt from such movies as Miss Congeniality and Coco.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. No, I agree. Eileen clocked it immediately. I didn't notice. She's like, that's not Jimmy Smits. I'm like, it's not.
Yeah.
Oh, she's like, that's Benjamin Bratt. I'm like, oh, I don't really know who that is. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, do they all look the same to you, Tom?
all those Alderaanians.
Yeah, there you go. You beat me to it. I was going to say Oregonians.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I look at this and I think that it would, if you were really redoing all of this, which obviously they're not going to do, I would have changed a few things about Andor to smoothly move into Rogue One as another episode of Andor, rather than what they did, which was kind of narrow Andor down so that it plugged in. You could change the beginning of, if you could change the beginning of Rogue One, I would do that, so you didn't have to do that. And one of the things I would do is I would not have Jyn Erso. I would have Bix be the person that he is paired with. And that requires a whole lot of rewrites, right? Because now you don't have Galen Erso, or if you do, you have to tie Galen Erso to Bix. But how much more compelling would it have been for him to be doing that final, like, we're going to die, but we're doing it for the rebellion with Bix, than Ms. Erso, who we just met. And I'm like, I don't know if I care about it.
It's like, yeah. And especially knowing that, he's got a space mom out there, a space baby mom.
Yeah.
It's like that. That's all like, okay. So I guess, you might have been an okay one night stand.
And I don't know if it would have been better or worse if Bix had given birth already and then got paired back up. And then you're like, oh, but our baby will live on. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like I would have cared more if that had been the conclusion versus, I don't know, Cass and Jin, they kind of know each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you what, it was interesting. I felt the spell come and go repeatedly over the course of Rogue One. And there were times that the movie actually did work, and it worked specifically because I could be fully invested in not keeping track of too many names or whatever. And then there were other times that it clearly was paying fan service to it ends up being a chimera where it's like, it's not quite Andor and it's not quite A New Hope, but this very modeled, you can feel the barrier when it transitions between the other. And
which is what it's trying to be. It's trying to be a bridge to A New Hope. And I think there's a way that they could do that more smoothly maybe, but that's what it's trying to be. So,
yeah.
Well, that is it for the full experience of Star Wars Andor, or rather just Andor, as it is more properly named. Hope you enjoyed it. I know it was an experiment to watch something this close to airtime. So appreciate you letting us experiment. It was really fun to try that out. Cordkillers@gmail.com if you want to let us know what you thought. And absolutely stick around for our next full experience, which will kick off next time with the first episode of 24. We are going to try to do the full experience on 24, which means we'll start with the first hour, season 1, episode 1, midnight to 1 a.m. We will then move to the ultimate episode, which is season 1, episode 24, 11 p.m. to midnight. So we're going to get the beginning and the end of the first day. Then the lowest episode is day 8, which is the final season. And of course, the last episode is day 8, which is the final season. But for next time, the first episode, season 1, episode 1, midnight to 1 a.m. of the series 24. You get these episodes early if you're a patron. So if you're not a patron already, go to patreon.com/Cordkillers, and we will be back with a new episode of the full experience next time. Talk to you then. See you later, everybody.